Hello Midnights. Thank you for tuning in. Up next, Melody of Fear, Unraveling the Urban Myth of the Whistler. Let us know where you are listening from and don't forget to subscribe. From whispered campfire tales to viral online creepypastas, urban myths serve as dynamic repositories of collective anxieties, moral narratives, and the timeless human fascination with the macabre. These contemporary folktales often mirror societal fears, reflecting underlying cultural tensions and providing cautionary lessons veiled in supernatural guise. They are not merely entertaining fictions but profound sociological indicators, revealing what truly unnerves a community and how those fears are processed and perpetuated across generations. Among the most chilling and enduring of these narratives is the Whistler, an enigmatic phantom whose eerie, disembodied melody foretells impending doom or signals a direct, terrifying encounter with the unknown. While its precise origins remain as elusive as its namesake's haunting tune, shifting with regional lore and individual tellings, the Whistler endures not merely as a superficial scary story but as a powerful testament to our primal fears of the unseen, the isolated, and the malevolent presence lurking just beyond the edge of perception. Its insidious power lies in its ability to transform an innocent sound into a harbinger of dread, inviting listeners to confront their deepest apprehensions and the inherent fragility of their perceived safety in a seemingly mundane world. At its core, the Whistler myth centers on an unsettling and distinctly unnatural whistling sound heard in desolate or secluded environments, typically under the profound shroud of night, when other senses are dulled and the imagination runs wild. Unlike the familiar, casual whistle of a human, this sound is invariably described with an otherworldly quality, prolonged, sustained, and often eerily beautiful in a way that simultaneously draws and repels the listener, creating an irresistible yet terrifying melody. The melody itself is rarely simple, repetitive too. Instead, it's often depicted as a complex, almost improvisational sequence of notes that oscillate between almost angelic tones and harsh, guttural, or discordant lyrics. It might begin with a deceptively sweet, almost childlike liminal, promising innocence or guidance, only to slowly descend into a maddening, off-key shriek that scrapes against the nerves. Some accounts describe it as a single, drawn-out note that seems to stretch infinitely, defying the limits of human breath, while others speak of intricate, haunting harmonies that seem to emanate from multiple, unseen sources at once. The pitch can vary wildly, from a barely audible, high-pitched whine that pierces the stillness to a low, resonant thrum that vibrates through the very ground, suggesting immense, hidden power. It's a tune that feels ancient and predating human music, perhaps echoing primordial dread or a forgotten language of terror. Crucially, the melody of the whistle often changes, and these shifts are typically depicted as directly correlating with the whistler's intent or the listener's peril. A gentle, inviting tune might morph into a rapid, aggressive cadence as the entity closes in, or a single mournful note could become a cacophony of disembodied whistles to signify extreme distress or the arrival of multiple unseen presences. The changes in melody might depend on the listener's proximity to the whistler, their emotional state, for example, heightened fear causing the tune to become more chaotic, or the specific consequence the whistler intends to inflict. These dynamic shifts in the melody serve to heighten tension and prevent the listener from becoming accustomed to the sound, ensuring a continuous state of unease. Descriptions frequently emphasize its dissonant or unsettling nature, a tune that subtly defies conventional musical scales, shifts impossibly in pitch or timbre, or one that appears to emanate from all directions at once, disorienting the listener and making it utterly impossible to pinpoint its source. This spatial ambiguity amplifies the terror, as the threat feels omnipresent and inescapable, a phantom sound that mocks attempts at localization, suggesting a being that defies physical laws and conventional perception. The specific character of the whistle can vary wildly, adding to its adaptability and local flavor. Sometimes it mimics the innocent, playful notes of a child's tune, echoing the lost innocence before abruptly shifting into something profoundly discordant, guttural, or menacing, adding a layer of insidious psychological terror to the collection of the night sound. In some variations, the whistle might seem to respond to the listener's imaginings or thoughts, mimicking the whistle, into a dangerous game of cat and mouse, a chilling dialogue with the unseen. The implications of encountering the whistler are equally varied and terrifying, ranging from a subtle, existential dread that gnaws at one's sense of security to outright physical danger and demise. In some narratives, merely hearing the tune is a dire omen, signifying an impending tragedy, severe misfortune, or even an untimely death for the listener or their loved ones. This passive threat allows for broader applicability and less direct confrontation, relying on the power of premonition and the creeping certainty of doom, leaving the victim in a state of anticipatory horror. In more direct and terrifying versions, the whistle precedes the physical manifestation of the entity itself. Here, the whistler might be depicted as a malevolent spirit or entity actively seeking to lure victims into a trap, playing on their curiosity or fear, a grotesque shape-shifting being preying on the curious and unwary, revealing its true, monstrous form only at the last terrifying moment, or even a spectral serial killer whose signature is the haunting melody that draws victims inexorably towards their doom, their final moments accompanied by the chilling tune, a twisted lullaby of death. The deliberate ambiguity surrounding the whistler's true identity, its physical form, or lack thereof, and its ultimate malevolent intent is a critical element of its terror. It is a fear not of a defined, identifiable threat, but of the terrifying possibilities that could exist, leaving the listener's own imagination to fill in the most horrifying blanks. This allows the myth to remain potently adaptable across diverse interpretations and individual fears. The psychological impact of the Whistler myth is profoundly effective, operating on multiple deeply ingrained levels of human fear. Firstly, it masterfully exploits the inherent vulnerability associated with isolation and profound darkness. The quintessential settings for encountering the Whistler are those where humans feel most exposed and disconnected: a winding, deserted country road under a moonless sky, miles from the nearest town, a creepy, abandoned house shrouded in forgotten memories, its history ending in past tragedies and present decay, the oppressive silence of the deep, primordial forest where sound carries unnervingly far, making every rustling potential threat, or even the unnerving quiet of an ostensibly empty urban building, a desolate parking garage, a cavernous subway underground, going isolated pedestrian underpass, particularly when experiencing a sudden power outage. These locations often function as liminal spaces, transitional or boundary areas that inherently evoke psychological unease, blurring the lines between safety and danger, known and unknown, and challenging the listener's sense of spatial orientation. The absolute absence of other human presence, coupled with the distinctive, unplaceable sound, creates an atmosphere ripe for dread, transforming routine solitude into a perilous ordeal. The reasons individuals might find themselves in such proximity to the Whistler are varied, but often fall into categories of ill-fated curiosity, being lost or disoriented, or simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Some accounts suggest the Whistler actively seeks out solitary individuals, perhaps those burdened by grief or preoccupation, making them more susceptible to its eerie call, almost as if it preys on emotional vulnerability. Others imply that the whistling is a territorial marker, warning intruders away from sacred or cursed grounds, or an inescapable consequence for those who trespass, suggesting a deeper, ancient connection to the land. The chilling transformation of a usually benign, even cheerful, sound like whistling into a harbinger of doom is a potent example of how easily our perception of reality can be manipulated by suggestion and fear, turning the familiar into the frightful. The myth shrewdly plays on the auditory sense, which is arguably one of the most primal and essential for detecting danger, often preceding visual confirmation. Humans evolved to rely on sound for survival in low-light conditions. When visual cues are limited by darkness or environmental obstructions, sound becomes paramount, and a sound that strongly suggests a hidden, malevolent presence is particularly unsettling, overriding rational thought with instinctual alarm. Our brains are wired to detect patterns and fill in gaps. In the absence of visual data, the brain invents the most frightening possibilities to explain an inexplicable sound, a phenomenon akin to auditory perception, where random sounds are perceived as voices or patterns. The uncanny valley concept, usually applied to visuals that are almost human but not quite, finds a sonic parallel here. A whistle that is almost human but subtly wrong can trigger profound discomfort and alarm, a deep-seated revulsion to something that mimics humanity but is fundamentally alien. Moreover, the whistler frequently carries a potent cautionary element, subtly discouraging reckless behavior such as straying too far from established safety, venturing into forbidden or dangerous places after dark, or ignoring instinctual feelings of unease, the gut feeling that something is wrong. It imparts a profound subliminal lesson about respecting the unknown, recognizing the boundaries of safe exploration, and acknowledging the potential dangers inherent in unchecked curiosity or a cavalier disregard for one's surroundings. In this way, the myth functions as a cultural tool for enforcing community norms, teaching self-preservation, and instilling a healthy, almost ancestral, sense of caution regarding the world's darker, less understood corners. Within the narrative fabric of the Whistler myth, specific encounters, though fictional, adhere to recurring archetypes that amplify the horror. One common scenario involves a lone traveler, perhaps a hiker or a motorist whose car has broken down, hearing the initial, distant, almost alluring whistle. Driven by curiosity or a desperate hope for help, they might attempt to follow the sound. As they delve deeper into the desolate landscape, a winding forest path, a forgotten trail leading to an abandoned mine, or the labyrinthine quarters of an old factory, the whistle intensifies, becoming clearer, closer, and overtly sinister. It might quicken its pace, hinting at pursuit, or suddenly cease, plunging the listener into an unnerving silence before erupting directly behind them. In some chilling accounts, the melody is accompanied by faint whispers, distorted voices, or the sound of shuffling footsteps that seem to circle the victim, creating a sense of being stalked by an invisible hunter. Visual manifestations, while rare, are typically fleeting and terrifying. A tall, shadowy figure seen only from the periphery, a pair of gleaming eyes in the darkness, or a form that seems to shift and ripple, defying solid definition. The outcome of such encounters varies but is almost always grim. Some victims are sent to simply vanish without a trace, their disappearance attributed to the whistler's malevolent work. Others are found later, driven to madness, unable to speak coherently, or perpetually haunted by the sound, their minds irrevocably broken. A less common but equally unsettling consequence is a lingering urge. The victim might suffer inexplicable backlog of illness, or a pervasive sense of dread that follows them for the rest of their lives. A constant reminder of their brush with the unknown. These narratives serve as potent warnings against venturing too far from human civilization or succumbing to dangerous curiosity, painting a vivid picture of the consequences of disturbing what should remain undisturbed. Furthermore, the whistler resonates deeply because it taps into the ancient human fear of the other, that which is not human, not natural, and fundamentally alien to our understanding and control. The whistler's often formless or ephemeral nature, manifesting solely as an elusive sound or a fleeting shadow, renders it an ungraspable threat. This elusiveness makes it terrifying precisely because it cannot be confronted, reasoned with, or even fully comprehended by conventional human means, stripping away our usual coping mechanisms and leaving us vulnerable. It embodies the profound existential dread of being utterly alone with an entity that seems to exist solely to instill terror or inflict harm, operating entirely outside the familiar rules and boundaries of the human world. This nebulous quality allows the myth to adapt and mutate with remarkable flexibility. Each individual who hears or retells the story inevitably projects their own specific fears, cultural anxieties, and local interpretations onto the core narrative, ensuring its continued relevance and evolution across generations and diverse communities. This adaptability also significantly contributes to its pervasive nature, as it can be localized to specific haunted spots. For example, the old abandoned mill where the whistler is heard, tied to historical tragedies or unsolved disappearances, or presented as a general ominous warning applicable anywhere silence descends, a timeless warning against the perils of the unknown. In a secularizing world, such myths often fill a void left by traditional religious warnings or explicit moral fables, providing a secularized explanation for inexplicable dread and reinforcing collective anxieties about the unseen dangers of the modern landscape. Symbolically, the whistler can be interpreted as a manifestation of the collective unconscious's anxieties about encroaching wilderness on civilization, the dangers of unsupervised freedom, or the lingering echoes of past traumas. It might represent the siren call of danger, the lure of the forbidden, or even the subtle decay of order in the face of chaos. Its sound, an invisible predator, evokes the primitive fear of being hunted without knowing the hunter's form. Cultural variations of mythology appear to be widespread, underscoring the universal human apprehension towards unexplained acoustic phenomena. Similar tales of eerie sounds preceding supernatural encounters are found in diverse folkloric traditions worldwide, often attributed to malevolent spirits, mischievous fae, or predatory cryptids. Examples include the mournful, wandering wailing of La Llorona from Latin American folklore, who cries for her lost children and sometimes lures living ones, the chilling, often prescient cries of the banshee in Irish mythology, foretelling death in a family, the disembodied whispers, cackles, and howls associated with various spectral beings across different cultures, from Japanese yurei, vengeful ghosts, to Native American skinwalkers, malevolent shapeshifters. These parallels demonstrate a deep-seated, cross-cultural human apprehension towards sounds that signify an unseen, threatening presence, solidifying the whistler's place within a global tapestry of fear-inducing folklore that exploits our most vulnerable sensory perceptions. In the digital age, the whistler finds new life and propagation through creepypastas, YouTube narrations, podcasts, and social media, where its simple yet effective premise can be shared rapidly, often with a fresh layer of anonymity and technological detachment, proving the enduring power of its core concept even as the medium of storytelling evolves. While the whistler doesn't typically have a singular, universally recognized origin story like some other myths. For example, Bloody Mary's association with the mirror ritual, its enduring nature suggests a subconscious adherence to archetypal fears. Some folklorists theorize that the Whistler could be a modern echo of older European or indigenous tales of nature spirits, tricksters, or malevolent entities that use sound to lure travelers astray or mark their territory. Its lack of a fixed narrative allows it to mutate and resonate differently in varied cultural contexts. For instance, in some localized versions, the Whistler might be the ghost of a tragic figure, forever seeking solace or revenge. Its whistle a mournful lament. In others, it might be a warning from benevolent spirits or a test of courage for those who dare to venture into forbidden zones. However, the most widespread and shown versions lean into the malevolent pursuit beyond this interpretation, playing on humanity's inherent fear of the unknown and the power of suggestion. In conclusion, the Whistler transcends the realm of mere spooky tale. It stands as a powerful testament to the enduring potency of urban myths, vivid reflections of our deepest societal and individual anxieties. Through its haunting, ambiguous melody and the terrifying elusiveness of its nature, it serves as a stark, auditory reminder of the ever-present unknown that lurks in the metaphorical and literal shadows of our modern world. It compels us to consider the fragility of our sense of security when faced with the inexplicable, and the powerful psychological interplay between sound, environment, and fear. Ultimately, the myth teaches us that sometimes, the most profound and terrifying threats are not those that can be visually identified or physically confronted, but rather those that we can only hear, a chilling, disembodied tune that beckons us into a narrative of fear, echoing ceaselessly through the silence, forever reminding us of what might lie just beyond our comprehension.